I wonder sometimes if there's something in our human experience that causes us to fear the end of civilization and the end of the ability for humans to live on the earth. I listened to some of the young people who talk about climate change and their disappointment with how previous generations have lived, that they feel is destroying their future. And it reminds me some of what my generation felt when I was young. The issue then was nuclear weapons, and uh, we kind of felt like we were never going to grow up to be adults. We were never going to live to be senior citizens because of the world was going to be obliterated by nuclear weapons, and part of that was the all the fear and and warranted fear of a nuclear war that was a very real possibility at that time. The United States had used nuclear weapons against Japan at the end of World War II, and then when I was an adolescent, we were in the middle of the Cold War, and we really thought that either one day the Russians would bomb the United States would bomb Russia, and there'd be a global nuclear war that would just obliterate civilization, make the world a place where you almost couldn't live. And when I was young, I was growing up maybe an hour or a little more from Philadelphia. We weren't that far from Baltimore, Washington, D.C. We were on the eastern seaboard, and we just knew that if there was a nuclear war, that bombs would be dropped on the major cities and along the eastern seaboard, and we would our way of life would be gone as a result of the radiation that would happen. And at school, we had bombing raid drills, and I remember in third grade um, where we did bombing raid drills, and we'd all put our heads down on our desks, and the teacher would pull down the window blinds so that flying glass wouldn't um, harm us as it flew into the room, and we were just expecting that someday that would happen. And one of the events that where the world came very close to that kind of disaster actually happening was the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, which at that time I was 9 years old. And in 1961, the United States had invaded Cuba in the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was a failure. But the Cuban government was very worried about the United States still trying to come in and take over the island, and rightfully so, because the United States did have plans to try and get rid of Castro. And so um, the Russians started building missile bases in Cuba, which is only 90 miles from Florida. And of course, the United States was concerned about having nuclear weapons pointed at them from Cuba. And so President Kennedy, on October 22nd of 1962, he uh, put a blockade against the ports of Cuba so that no more missile equipment could come into Cuba. And this was considered an act of war and really set off a major crisis between the United States and Russia on, and we were expecting that there could be nuclear weapons used at any moment. On Friday, October 26, 1962, President Kennedy said that he really didn't think this was going to be solved without a direct nuclear attack. And I remember going home from school on Friday, October 26, wondering if I was going to be alive on Monday when school was scheduled to open again. And there's something that happens when you're 9 years old, and you're not sure if you're going to survive the weekend, and it's all being decided by politicians in Washington and in Moscow. On Sunday, 28th of October, Nikita Khrushchev and John Kennedy reached an agreement. Um, Russia agreed to remove their missiles from Cuba. The United States agreed to remove its nuclear weapons from Turkey. And the United States made a commitment that they would not invade Cuba again. And the whole thing was resolved. But we didn't know what was going to happen. And today we face different crises and we have different issues that face our survival as a human race. And I remember when I was in that age and was when there would also be futuristic articles about the year 2000 and I would talk to my mother about the year 2000 and she would say, "Oh, Merle, don't worry about that. Like the world's going to end way before 2000." And but it didn't, and life goes on. And so while every generation faces its crises, um, and we ought to take them seriously, life goes on and the world continues. And I don't know what the world will do, what the advances will be made, and what decisions will be made in regards to climate change, but the world will continue on, and we will find a way to live. And ultimately, God is in control, and He will provide a way for us uh, to survive, and He is our protector and our provider.